So today's Dharma talk is titled Big Sky Mind. And I'd like to start it out um, with my relationship with Big Sky. So when I was a small boy, ever since I was a small boy, I've always been in love with the vastness of the sky. Some of my earliest memories were of the crazy blue that you get in Colorado, and the blue skies that they have there, especially in the summer. And the mountains have the bluest of skies for some reason. Maybe it's the altitude or something in the air. One of my fondest memories was when I was really little. I was probably around 9 or 10, maybe 11. And I remember going into this old miners cemetery, which was in Central City, Colorado, up in the mountains. And I was looking at all the tombstones, and I remember looking up at the blue sky through the gold of the aspen leaves, and being enamored by the electricity that was in that color of blue in the sky against the golden of the aspen. I also remember when I was a little bit older and we drove from Colorado to Iowa to visit my aunt who was living in Iowa at the time. And we were driving our 1959 Chevy Impala. And if you've ever seen or know what that is, it was a giant green land yacht that we were riding across the plains. Now, one of the things that's amazing is as you leave Denver, you leave the Rockies and you go into the flattest part of our country. And one of the things you notice as you travel farther and farther east is how big the sky is. And in no time of driving, the mountains were left behind, and I was, even at that age, enamored at how big and wide open it was moving into the plains. Now, as a disclaimer, Montana has asked that I say that they too are big sky country, so I'm doing that for Montana. But big sky country, wherever it is, wherever the sky is big. Now, you may be wondering why I'm giving you this travelogue. Well, one of the reasons why I'm giving you this travelogue is that for me, the big sky represents big sky mind. It represents boundlessness, the openness that's found within the Dharma and within Buddhist practice. One of my favorite teachings from Gyome Kabose Sensei was that the teachings of the Buddha are everywhere. We just need to look. So today, the big sky, the sky itself, will be our teacher. In Koyo Kubose's book, Reverend Koyo Kubose's book, Bright Dawn, there is a chapter where he writes, quote, "I think identifying with the sky is a universal human experience. When looking at the sky from the top of the mountains or across a wide plain, there's a feeling that takes us outside of ourselves." End quote. To practice the way, to stand up for social justice, to minister to the suffering, to realize awakening, we cultivate our hearts and minds towards openness. We cultivate resilience, and the vast sky and big sky mind can be a source of that resilience. What is it about vast spaces that make us quiet? Words seem less urgent. Time slows down. That's one of my favorite things about doing a road trip in the Western United States is there's so much vastness. The sky is so big that I finally have space for myself for my heart and mind in that sky. I love these lines from our service manual, which draws from Dogen's great work of the Shobogenzo. Quote, the original, quote, "The great sky does not obstruct drifting of white clouds. It is Shito's expression, nor does the great sky obstruct the great sky. The great sky does not impede the great sky itself from drifting." End quote. Maybe there's something about experiencing the wide open sky that allows those things that are preoccupying us disappear in the boundlessness of it, into the boundlessness of the sky itself. Maybe that's because the sky has nowhere to go, nothing to do, and no one to be. In the quote from Dogen, he's using the vast sky as a teacher of letting go in meditation. When we sit in meditation, we become the vast sky, allowing our thoughts to rise and fall, and not hindering them in their rising or their falling, or chasing them across the sky. I tend to be a cloud chaser. In a world that at times feels like it's closing in on us, suffocating us with ignorance, greed, racism, and hate, making us want to turn away from the world that desperately needs each of us right now. How important it is for us to cultivate our resilience, our practice to find an antidote to that turning away. The foremost scholar of Dogen, Shohaku Akamura Roshi, writes, quote, "Sitting like a vast sky doesn't hinder or stop white clouds freely flying. That means we do nothing. We don't know anything, and we don't gain anything. We are just sitting. Just sitting. Clouds are freely coming and going. Just sitting." End quote. And there's also this line from Dogen, quote, "The great sky does not impede the great sky itself from drifting." End quote. What does that mean? I love again this from Shohaku Akamura Roshi, quote, "Dogen said a very interesting thing. He said, the great sky does not impede the great sky itself from drifting, and also white clouds do not impede the white clouds themselves. Great sky. In this entire network of interdependent origination, in this case, we are like white clouds within the vast sky. Somehow we are born, stay for a while, and disappear. Each and every being is like a white cloud in the vast sky. But he also says, the great sky doesn't hinder the great sky. Each and every cloud doesn't hinder each other, and every cloud flying freely. I think this is really a great comment. Everything is moving and changing and coming and going within this great universe. Within this entire network of an independent origination, every one of us, like a cloud in the sky, appear, stay, change, and disappear. In our meditation, we really become a part of this movement. White clouds do not hinder the entire network or vast sky. End quote. The sky as teacher, as metaphor for mind. This is how spiritual truths are realized. It is through the power of the imaginal, the poetic, the language of dreams. Back to Reverend Koyo's chapter on sky. And this talks about what watching the sky can generate within ourselves. Quote, there is a feeling that takes us out of ourselves and allows us to view our concerns from a wider perspective. Having a wide perspective is called takan. In Japanese, I came across this word in an essay written by my father. He explained how many unnecessary worries in life come from being attached to and victimized by narrow, egocentric views. Takan means to take the long view of things. So the sky can remind us to take the long view or the wide view of our lives. This is especially important when we find ourselves in the narrow cells of our own stories, of how things are supposed to be, our feelings of shame, unworthiness, whatever it is. We can open up our big sky mind and give ourselves room to breathe. Give us room and perspective so we can begin to see the stories for what they are. They're just stories. And in this big sky mind, there's room for them to float away. Too many times in my life, I locked myself in that narrow cell of my stories and my emotions, becoming my emotions and my stories. And when I did, my world got smaller and smaller. And I found it harder to breathe. And in time, I lost my authentic self in the process. And maybe ultimately that's the difference of feeling an emotion and becoming an emotion. Maybe feeling the emotion is when we allow ourselves to really feel it without judgment and without a need to fix it. We say to it, Namo Amida Butsu, come as you are welcome. We simply give it room to be. And when we become the emotion, when there is no room, no space between us and it, no room for it to breathe or us to let it go, to let it just be, not to try to fix it. Maybe that is where we get stuck. To experience our emotions, we need room for them to just be so we can set them free. Maybe that space to allow it to happen is what the sky has taught me as a Dharma teacher. There is a lot the sky has to teach us, especially when we think of an everyday Buddhism kind of way. Each morning when I wake up and look towards the sky, it reminds me of big sky mind, the mind that does not hinder white clouds. And we can think of big sky mind as taking a wider perspective of making room and cultivating our awareness of our own suffering and that of others that we are all intimately connected to. Reverend Koyo goes on to say, quote, Whenever people are in conflict with one another, taking a wide view means to see the situation from the other person's perspective. A wide view means that other people count just as much as we do, that their needs are just as important as ours. The conflict does not have to be experienced as my needs are more important than yours. The needs of both sides should be recognized as equally valid. Then it is easier to focus on resolving how their needs can be mutually met. Of course, there are no guarantees, but resolution is more likely when things are seen from a wider perspective than just one's own position. Dualistic thinking, such as I am right and you are wrong. That only polarizes problems and intensifies conflict. War can be an acronym for we are right. Indeed, this describes what happens when war is a personal conflict between individuals as much as armed conflict between nations. End quote. And as some of you may already know, there is an old saying that says you can be right or you can be in a relationship. I would like to quote with two quotes in relation to Big Sky Mind, and one is from Shunryu Suzuki, which I really appreciate. Quote, with Big Mind, we accept each of our experience as if recognizing the face we see in the mirror as our own. For us, there is no fear of losing this mind. There is nowhere to come or to go. There is no fear of death, no suffering from old age or sickness, because we enjoy all aspects of life as an unfolding of Big Mind. We do not care for any excessive joy, so we have imperturbable composure. And it is with this imperturbable composure of Big Mind that we practice Zazen meditation. And lastly, this from Emily Dickinson. Quote, the brain is whiter than the sky. For put them side by side, the one the other will contain with ease, and you beside. The brain is deeper than the sea. For hold them blue to blue, the one the other will absorb, as sponges buckets do. May the sky become one of our teachers, and as Ryokan, the holy fool of Zen tradition, explained, may our mind be no more than the passage of wind in a vast sky. Namo Amida Butsu.